When the time came for their purification according to the law of Moses, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written, every firstborn male shall be designated as holy to the Lord. And they offered a sacrifice according to what is stated in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. The feast we're keeping falls on February 2nd, the 40th day after Christmas, and has 3 names. It should be called the presentation of Christ in the temple. This is the most important element in the commemoration. The prayer book says the feast is called the Purification of Saint Mary the Virgin, and this title persists. It was also known as Candlemas because of candles carried in procession to express the truth proclaimed, which is part of the gospel of the day. The proclamation that Christ had come to be a light to lighten the Gentiles, as well as to be the glory of his people Israel. This is the background. But what happened in the temple at Jerusalem that 40th day after the birth of Jesus, and why did it happen? The key is found in the Old Testament scriptures. It is significant that 3 times in these verses, Luke tells us observances were carried out according to the law of Moses. 2 distinct ceremonies were involved that day, one with the child and the other with the mother. The first was the redemption of the firstborn son by payment of a sum of money. In Exodus 13, the Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel. Every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem." Well, what was the redemption price? In the book of Numbers, at a month old you shall redeem them. You shall fix at 5 shekels in silver, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. The firstborn male child was considered holy, belonging to the Lord, in view of the sparing of Israel's firstborn on the night of the Passover. He had to be purchased back by his parents and presented to the Lord. The other ceremony was the purification of the mother, explained in Leviticus. A Jewish woman was ceremonially unclean for 40 days after the birth of a son, and at the end of that time she was required to offer 2 sacrifices for her purification, a lamb for a burnt offering and a pigeon for a sin offering. Those who could not afford a lamb were allowed to offer 2 pigeons. That is what the mother of Jesus did. It was the poor person's offering. Only after these sacrifices had been made could the woman again take her place in society and engage in public worship. Luke's account makes clear that both these ceremonies, the presentation of the child and purification of the mother, were duly carried out as the law required. Things were done for the child and his mother, and said about the child and his mother. Buying a child back from God or incinerating livestock in the interests of ritual cleanliness is difficult to defend as the basis of a Christian festival. When we turn from the things done to the infant Jesus to the things said about him, we leave behind the observance of the law and listen to the voice of prophecy. The spokesman is Simeon, that devout and upright old man who had been promised that he would not see death till he had seen the Messiah. That day he was led by the Spirit to the temple. He took Mary's child into his arms and knew God's promise had been fulfilled. For mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles, and the glory of thy people Israel. The great truth Simeon disclosed was that Jesus was to inaugurate a new order and a new covenant, embracing all nations, Gentiles as well as Jews. In his later words to Mary, he also foreshadows the cross and the bitter pain that she herself would share. This child is destined to be a sign which men reject, and you will be pierced in your heart. This prophecy was fulfilled on Good Friday, and through the agonizing events of Good Friday, God's saving purpose for all mankind was accomplished. Mine eyes have seen thy salvation. Simeon could say that because he had looked into the face of the baby Jesus, we too, by faith, can see in him the salvation of God. Jesus was presented in the temple as the law required, and he was the inspiration for the prophecy of Simeon. Things were done to him and said about him. And what does it all have to say to us? First, let us go to the New Testament and listen to St. Paul in his letter to the Ephesians. Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, to make her holy by cleansing her with the washing of water by the word, to present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle, yes, so she may be holy and without blemish. The interesting thing is that the two main ideas of the gospel are combined. The church, as the bride of Christ, is to be presented to the Lord in splendor, and she is to be purified by water and the word, to be holy and without blemish. The collect in the Book of Common Prayer still carries these two ideas of presentation and purification. Unfortunately, purification is considered to be of less importance and has now disappeared altogether. And so the collect from the Book of Alternate Services is, "Blessed are you, O Lord our God, for you have sent us your salvation. Inspire us by your Holy Spirit to recognize him who is the glory of the Lord and the light for all the nations. You have sent us your salvation, and we recognize in him." It would have been interesting to maintain some idea of purification, but there we are, and this is what we do.